The host had barely finished thanking donors when she reached for the mic with a smile that made the stage crew clear space. "One quick toast," she said, voice syrup smooth, hand lifted to hush a room that wanted to be dazzled. I was 3 tables back, pretending to study the silent auction catalog. She raised her flute toward me as if aiming a lens. "To the man who keeps me grounded," she began, pausing for the practiced chuckle. Then she told a story about me mixing up a reservation and almost sending us to a carving class instead of a tasting. It wasn't true, it was close enough to pass. Laughter ricocheted off the chandeliers, faces tilted toward her. "Relax, this is just who I am," she added, turning back toward the mic. The line was light on paper and heavy in the room. My face did what it had learned to do, a courteous smile, chin lifted, shoulders squared. Inside, the temperature dropped. Not anger, something colder. The spotlight dusted her shoulders. She added one more tag, another neat jab about how I label spice jars because I love control. More laughter. A waiter drifted toward her orbit. I noticed who laughed first and who checked my expression before joining in, who raised a phone to capture her. I could have asked for the mic. Instead, I fixed on the weight of the glass in my palm. A board member leaned over and whispered, "You're a good sport," like it was a badge I'd applied for. I nodded and filed him in a new cabinet in my head, people who need her to be bright and me to be absorbent. When she finished, applause came in waves. She gave a tiny curtsy and glanced at me, just a flash, to confirm I was performing my part. I was. The host steered the program back to grants and impact slides, but the energy had shifted. The event was still about scholarships. The room had quietly agreed to be about her. She settled near the stage, fingers tracing the rim of her glass, eyes scanning for the next camera. A couple asked for a selfie. She tilted her head, chin down, gaze up. A stillness moved through me, the kind that arrives when you stop defending a border and simply mark it. I wasn't embarrassed. I was cataloging. Details filed themselves, a smudge on her lipstick, a cufflink flashing, a planner mouthing "nailed it." The violinist's interlude sank under talk. My phone buzzed. "She's on fire tonight," and I let it sit unread. Fire is bright. Fire also eats. During dessert, she brushed by my table, fingertips grazing my shoulder in a way that read affectionate from 5 feet away. Up close, it felt like a stage cue. "You're okay?" she asked, not waiting for the answer. "Of course," I said, setting the word between us like a prop. She lifted her glass toward the next cluster and floated on. That was the moment it switched. Not a bang, just a click. I stopped trying to catch her eye and started taking mental photographs, who she let too close, whose hands lingered, who checked the door when she laughed. The room wasn't a room anymore, it was evidence of how she liked to be seen. I realized I wasn't beside her life. I was inside her set. The host announced a travel package and a private tour. I found the exit sign and the corridor that led to quiet. I didn't leave, I marked the route. My pulse stayed even, and the chill inside me clarified like a window wiped clean in one firm swipe. She had told me who she was into a microphone. I believed her. Believing her felt like the first honest thing I'd done all night. Suspicion began like a loose screw you only hear when the room goes silent. The week after the gala, her calendar grew blocks that hadn't existed the night before. Mentoring night, studio, collab run. Dinners set months out flipped to tentative, then vanished. She shrugged and moved on. I asked once lightly while we sorted mail. She kept the silver compass pendant spinning with her thumb so it never landed. "This is who I am," she said, gentle, final. The pendant flashed north, then south. She pinned a flyer to the fridge and closed the cabinet. Our shared tools started closing too. The grocery list in our joint app reappeared with my access reduced to view only. Location sharing toggled off with a cheerful notification. The home speaker wanted her voice reauthorized and misheard mine twice. I stood in our kitchen repeating a command to our playlist, feeling like a guest. Routes shifted. Thursday nights that used to end at the yoga studio began tracing the warehouse district, converted lofts, late galleries. She came home once with a stripe of paint under a nail. "Work spilled," she said, stepping around the question I hadn't finished. The pendant lay half hidden at her collarbone like a coin tucked in a sleeve. Small things multiplied. Her phone landed face down with a quick practiced flip. Alarms moved from audible to silent taps I could see on her wrist but not here. The front lock chimed in a double tone after midnight. I hadn't set that sound. In the app, my role had become collaborator, not admin. I took a screenshot and said nothing. A friend texted. She smiled in a way that didn't match the message. Studio ran long, she said about the previous night. I asked if the mentoring program had a schedule I could support, rides, meals, anything. She touched the pendant instead of answering. You supporting me is enough, she said, letting enough land like a gate. Meanwhile, a hiss under everything. A shared drive renamed itself and logged me out. Two-factor prompts arrived at odd hours for devices I didn't recognize. Our carrier congratulated us on activating a new device. When I tapped for details, the page stalled and returned me to sign in. Not a glitch, a door sliding in a hidden track. I stopped pushing and wrote down what moved. I measured in minutes now, the extra 7 between her text and her arrival, the pause in the driveway, the 10 added to showers that used to be quick. She wore the compass pendant more often over heavier fabrics. The chain had a kink near the clasp as if tugged and smoothed. When I asked who was at studio, she softened instead of stiffening. That softness was the tell. I didn't chase a confession. I tuned the instruments, exported receipts, enabled logs, set alerts on shared accounts. Nothing dramatic, just the quiet work of someone who stops defending and starts observing. She had told me who she was. Believing her was not surrender, it was a tool. By Friday, our calendar looked like a mosaic built by 2 different people. I sent her an invite for a vendor walkthrough. The app offered her address, then withdrew it, replacing her name with a string of numbers. A small sync icon pulsed once, paused, then disappeared. She passed my chair, touched my shoulder in a way that photographs well, and said she was heading to mentoring. The pendant swung as she turned, catching light. I noted the time. The first slip dressed itself as a compliment at a midweek screening. She moved through the lobby like it had been arranged for her stride. The silver compass pendant sat bright against black fabric, turning with each laugh. A gallery guy, friendly eyes, too much cologne, cut in with a grin. He's got taste, the compass suits you, he said, nodding at her necklace as if it were sponsored. He didn't look at me, his gaze slid past my shoulder. She smiled the way that photographs well and angled her body to block me a little. I asked, light as a tap on glass, which he? Her fingers froze on the pendant, then resumed their spin. The grin trembled. Oh, the jeweler, he said too fast. I mean whoever helped pick it out, great eye. She leaned into the save. He means the designer, she said, tapping the pendant like rolling credits. The lobby's pre-show buzz made people forgive anything. I let it go in public. Discretion always plays better than precision. Inside, she kept the pendant out even as the air cooled. During the previews, her phone lit, then flipped face down on her thigh. She laughed a half beat late, as if part of her attention lived in another tab. When she rested her head on my shoulder, it looked affectionate and felt light. After the Q&A, the same guy reappeared with a programmer. You'll be at the late thing, right? He asked her, then tacked on, both of you. She squeezed my wrist. We have an early morning, but I'll swing by for a minute. He nodded. In the stairwell, she smoothed the chain. A small kink near the clasp caught light. You okay? I asked because that's the script. Always, she said, kissing the question instead of answering. The night outside was cool enough to sting. It could be nothing. A sloppy pronoun, a crowded lobby, a man who wants to author every origin story. Explainable, that's the danger, the mind's eagerness to dock at the nearest safe harbor. I brought home data, not comfort. Back at the apartment, she dropped the compass on the counter beside a water glass and an admission stub. The pendant rolled and settled, the chain catching on itself. I'm wired, she said, heading for the shower. I turned the pendant under the light. The knot looked like the aftermath of a quick tug. I photographed the knot and the time, then the stub's timestamp, then the rideshare receipt with a pickup a block off the theater. It could be a driver workaround. It could also be habit. I let both possibilities stand without voting. She returned in a robe, hair damp. Tomorrow is stacked, she said, moving past me to the bedroom. Her phone buzzed. The banner hid the name behind new message. She left the pendant where it lay, as if it were a badge she could clock out of. I rinsed the chain in warm water, not to clean it, but to see if the kink would relax. It didn't. I dried it and set it exactly as she left it. The apartment settled into quiet. The data points lined up like beads with invisible thread. When she fell asleep, I watched the soft device lights and wrote one line: lobby compliment, identify source. I wasn't hunting guilt. I was inventorying reality. The remark gave me direction, not a verdict. In the morning, the pendant was gone. The glass kept a faint ring. She left before sunrise, the home app chimed. I slid the photos into a folder labeled by date. There was still room for a harmless explanation. I didn't need to crush that hope. I needed to make sure it earned its place. The footage surfaced because I stopped trusting cheerful error messages. The doorbell app blamed a sync hiccup. I skipped the interface and opened the cloud archive hidden under 3 menus. Download all. The bar crawled, then filled midnight clips I'd never seen stacked by time. At 2:11 a.m. on a Tuesday labeled studio, the camera woke. The porch was a flat wash of light. She stepped into frame with her hood up, key already in hand. The silver compass pendant slipped from her collar and flashed, one shard that gave me a fixed point. She didn't ring. She looked back once, like waiting for a cue. Just off frame, a sleeve grazed the glass in a crescent smear. The lens caught fabric and a hint of wrist, then lost it. No face. Enough to turn mentoring night into coordinates. She held the door with her foot 2 inches, the space you make for someone who knows the routine. Then she closed it and the camera cut to black. I replayed the clip with sound up. Our chime had changed to a softer tone. I never chose that. The smart lock showed manual entry guest code. Guest code. In the home dashboard, a new profile sat where there hadn't been one. Studio, limited access entry lights. It carried admin rights for 2 days, then disappeared, leaving a neat trail of timestamps. The hunch turned into record. Someone had access because she granted it. I scrolled further back. Another late clip, 1:44 a.m., a Sunday she'd called prep. Same hood, same pendant flash, same 2-inch door hold. In the reflection, a rectangle of glow lifted chest high, then ducked when she checked the street. On both nights, calendar blocks labeled studio ended exactly when the camera woke. I paused the frame where the pendant brightened and let the still sit. I thought about the kink I'd photographed near the clasp, how even metal remembers being pulled. Heat drained off. The room grew simple, like removing tinted glasses and seeing the true white of the walls. Cross-check. The carrier bill showed data spikes at 2:15 a.m., unknown device prompts at 2:17, and one successful login to our speaker at 2:19 from guest music. I hadn't named it. The song played for 9 minutes. I sampled it. Low instrumental, almost white noise. Cover sound. Acceptance wasn't dramatic. It was administrative. I made coffee I didn't drink and moved through the house with the timeline playing in my pocket. I toggled access lists, revoked what I could, saved the log to a PDF, mirrored it to an encrypted drive. The printer's fan hummed. At lunch, she sent a photo from studio, paint-speckled floor, her sneakers framed carefully, the compass pendant visible against a loose tee. I replied, "Looks busy," and filed it beside the clips. Busy was one word. That evening, I asked nothing. I set the memory of the pendant between us and watched how she filled silences with brightness. The camera had shown me an angle I wasn't meant to see. The truth wasn't a scene. It was a system she'd tuned until I couldn't hear it. I heard it now. Before bed, I restored the doorbell's missing thumbnails by clearing the cache she'd lost. The archive repopulated like a curtain rising. I matched times to calendar blocks and wrote a single line under the date. Not romance, access. Naming it wasn't anger. It was gravity, the pull toward what already is. I let myself fall to it and stopped reaching for a softer landing that didn't exist. News didn't arrive in one blow, it seeped in. Her sister texted, "I don't want to be in the middle." A college friend's voice note swerved into, "We all support you," as if I'd asked for a vote. Our venue thread went quiet, then reappeared with hearts and a meme. At a tasting, the coordinator said her preferences 3 times, then added, "And yours, of course," without meeting my eyes. My name sat on the contract, her email lived under finance. An extra photo package showed up with my digital signature. I know the angle of my initials, I hadn't put them there. Not shock recognition, a door locked months ago and painted to match the hallway. Back home, a gift bag waited on the bench. Black tissue, tidy ribbon, a blank card with a tiny silver compass sticker. Inside, pendant polish. She brushed the bag with 2 fingers as she passed. Sweet, she said, already moving, the silver compass pendant at her throat catching light as she tugged the chain like a thought she wasn't finishing. A receipt hid under the insert. Cash sale, boutique in the warehouse district, timestamped 10 minutes after a studio block. No name. I photographed it and slid everything back. Packaging isn't proof, it's contour. By the weekend, the chorus had rhythm. Her aunt called about table layouts and drifted into, I thought you two had. Boundaries sorted, letting boundaries do the work. A groomsman reacted to a message I hadn't sent. In our shared drive, a tab titled Sensitive appeared accessible to everyone but me. The secondary plotline wasn't romance, it was routing. Risk turned into numbers. Deposits to venue, florist, transport, drawn from my account because early I'd said, I'll make it easy. She kept the logins and moved the sliders. A videographer retainer hit at 1:12 a.m. The IP matched the guest device block from our hub. It wasn't a door hold anymore. It was a map of choices I'd let auto-renew. I answered with plain steps, revoked stale tokens, reset recovery emails, set alerts for guest code changes, restored admin on the home hub with the serial behind the panel, dust streaked my fingertips. When the screen woke, the studio profile grayed out like a light cut at the board. The house exhaled. She noticed the new login prompt and glanced back as if the device had coughed. System update, she asked, already walking. Security housekeeping, I said. She adjusted the compass pendant like a presenter straightening a mic, then mentioned mentoring that night. The word didn't bother with costume anymore. A friend stopped by with a bottle and the smile people take to waiting rooms. He offered neutral hope. You know we love you both, while his thumb worried the label. He didn't ask questions, his eyes went to the gift bag, then away. His silence joined the others. By Monday, my phone buzzed less. Updates flowed to her. I opened a sub-account labeled Venue, moved funds, and set the old one to view only with me as sole controller. No announcement, just a pivot. I didn't invite sides. They'd chosen hearts, delays, omissions. That night she left the compass pendant on the counter again, a small star on stone. I wiped a fingerprint from the polished bottle without opening it. The chain's kink remained, metal remembers. I secured the last admin setting and closed the laptop. In a quiet house you can feel where a room points. I'd paid for the room. The chairs were turning away. That told me enough about the show I'd been funding. She changed tactics in a breath. Saturday morning she set both hands on her stomach and watched my face. We're expecting, she said, voice careful. The silver compass pendant rested at her collarbone. She pinched the charm between finger and thumb. I didn't perform. I asked the date, logistics only. It landed inside weeks labeled studio, the same nights of guest codes and softened chimes. She touched my wrist like a host marking her spot. This is who I am, she added, almost tender. The pendant turned once. My phone hummed with a carrier notification, billing cycle end, and a list of messages. A clinic name sat in the preview. I slid the phone away and nodded as if I were absorbing joy. She mapped vitamins, rest, mentoring hours because she couldn't let anyone down. I said, we'll make sure you're supported, and kept my hand steady on the table. In the pantry, I opened a folder labeled health, ordered a lockbox, and asked for the clinic's name for my records. She tightened the chain and said she'd send it later, drifting into a baby name list from a thread I wasn't in. By afternoon, the carrier portal showed verification texts, 2 missed calls labeled clinic, 1 voicemail flagged automated results, and a short code confirming a rule out. She had listed me as emergency contact months ago. The system didn't care about household politics, only the number. It sent dates, times, and a link. The portal took a birth date and the code. The file was plain facts. A negative lab, a note recommending follow-up for something unrelated, a timestamp 3 days before her announcement. None of it matched her timeline. I read it twice with the same calm I use on camera manuals. I didn't rush back with proof. I returned to the couch where she scrolled nursery palettes, tilting the screen toward praise. I asked about the appointment date. She lifted the pendant and said the clinic had updated the chart wrong. The sentence was soft, practiced. I made tea the way she likes it so my hands had something steady while my mind cleared the confetti from the floor. That evening I wrote a list, request paper confirmation, ask for the official timeline, confirm provider. I used for insurance because documents move when money is involved. She nodded quickly, promising to email everything after mentoring. Her eyes skipped mine and stuck to the clock. The guest code log chimed at 10:06 p.m. I let it record. Close to midnight she came back with cheeks flushed and a tote that didn't look heavy. "I don't want to stress," she said, placing it on a stool like proof of effort. The compass clicked against the zipper. I told her stress wasn't necessary, clarity was. In bed she placed my hand on her stomach in a script from Reveal Reels. I let it rest there and watched the ceiling where the city glow drew a thin seam. I thought of the lab notes economy. Ruled out, no emergent findings. Morning brought an email with no attachments and a promise of tomorrow. I replied with the insurance pre-authorization for signature. Over breakfast she traced the rim of her cup and murmured, "This is who I am," using the phrase like a sleep mask. I didn't argue. I set alerts and cued forms. Belief shifted. Doubt needs a crowd, belief prints, signs, files. When she left for mentoring, the house didn't feel empty. It felt aligned. The compass pendant caught a square of sun as she closed the door, bright and exact. I arrived at the venue an hour early with a plain brief folder. The ballroom was half lit, tape squares marked where tables would go. I asked for a quiet office. The office faced a brick wall. I set pages in a line. Venue contract with payer updated, florist amendment, transport reroute, doorbell logs, carrier bill, clinic report with one line underlined. Last, a page titled Rescission printed on thick stock. She came on time with a smile tuned for tour photos. The silver compass pendant sat at her throat. She greeted the coordinator, then saw the papers. The door clicked shut. "What's all this?" Light voice, palms open. "A map," I said, tapping each stack. "Schedule edits that don't match your calendar, footage timestamps, access lists, billing trail, the clinic note. It's accurate." She touched the nearest page as if rearranging could change order. The pendant clicked. "You're misreading tone," she murmured. "This is who I am, spontaneous, busy. You've always liked that I shine." "It isn't shine," I said evenly. "It's records." I pointed at the guest code entries, the late clips, the 1:12 a.m. charge. "You granted access, then built a story to float over it. You staged the announcement. Dates don't align." Her mouth pressed into the small line that usually wins rooms. "You're overreacting," she tried, twirling the chain until the kink met her nail. "We can reset, simplify." "It's already simple." I slid the florist amendment toward her. "Deposits reassigned. Venue funds moved to a controlled subledger. Video retainer closed. Rings returned to the jeweler. Courier confirmation by noon." My tone didn't rise. It read like a serial number. "Paperwork in a romance," she said, reaching for a laugh. "Paperwork in a contract." I turned the clinic note so it faced her. She didn't read it. "No performance needed." Her shoulders lifted and fell. "Okay, honesty," she said, but the script didn't come. She tried praise. "You're steady, rare, we can fix rough edges." "There's nothing to fix." I placed the final page between us. "Sign that you've received notice I'm not proceeding." The word "not" landed and stayed. She looked toward the door, toward where an audience might be. No one entered. The compass stopped moving, a small coin waiting for a cue. "You can't just walk away from everything we built," she said, voice lower now. "I'm walking away from the part that didn't exist," I answered. "The rest is archived." I slid a flash drive across the desk, clips, logs, receipts, the timeline. "For your records, I'm not here to accuse, I'm here to conclude." She tapped the drive with her nail. "So that's it, you vanish." "No, I stopped participating in a story that asks me to ignore what I've seen." I stood, gathered my copies, left hers aligned. The coordinator's shadow crossed the glass, then retreated. At the threshold she tried one last route, a whisper. "Don't do this to us." "You said this is who you are," I replied. "I finally am too." I set the key on the desk and walked back to the half-lit ballroom. The folder felt light, it held only duplicates. When she stepped out, the crew had returned to scheduling. She scanned for a camera that wasn't pointed at her. The pendant caught a beam and flashed for no one. She had come ready to direct a scene. There was no scene to direct. The room followed the paperwork. In that quiet she recognized she'd lost control, not to anger but to order that didn't require her permission. By midweek the message threads looked like low tide. The group chat that once lived on exclamation points ran on thumbs up and timestamps. Invitations slipped into gaps where talk used to be. People who relied on her shine chose neutrality. Vendors adjusted faster than friends. The venue confirmed release and asked where to send the balance. The florist sent 2 lines, refund processed, delivery canceled. The videographer closed the retainer and wished us clarity, that word people use when they want to sound caring without standing anywhere. Her sister called, hesitated, and said she was thinking of both of us. The aunt with seating chart opinions went quiet. A groomsman texted about tuxes, then deleted it. Remove a stage and performers look for a new one. Some find another room. Some stop talking. At home, the silver compass pendant lay where I'd left it after the venue meeting. Centered on the counter, chain in a soft coil, the kink still there like an old crease in a folded map. It looked smaller without an outfit to broadcast it. I walked past it the way you pass a paperweight on a desk that isn't yours anymore. I unlinked devices methodically, guest profiles wiped, admin rights pulled into one account with a token I memorized and didn't save. The doorbell returned to its firm chime. The speaker forgot favors granted to a soft voice. The house sounded like a house again. I exported the last logs and filed them under closure, a word I don't love that earns its keep when you label folders. She tried to keep the current running. A captioned photo, a coffee, a laptop, the pendant at the edge of frame. Comments stacked from people who needed to look present. I didn't react. She texted about space, and I answered with 2 sentences containing dates and pickup times. The conversation ended with the gravity of done. A courier brought the jewelry box. I signed and watched the truck vanish. Later a friend pinged to ask if I was okay. I replied, "Everything is in order." Paperwork moved like a slow tide. 2 names unbraided across accounts, shared lists dissolved into single-owner tasks, my opt-outs lined like fence posts. We had built a system that assumed we were permanent. It took 3 days to teach it we were. The last item was the venue key. I set it in an envelope and wrote the date on the flap. No ceremony. I slid the envelope into a drawer and closed it on purpose. The room we planned never existed. The only thing to return was expectation. Expectations don't have a forwarding address. By Friday, her circle thinned without a headline. The friends who thrive on proximity to light followed brighter bulbs. She posted from a sidewalk and tagged no one. Echoes do that, they repeat then fade. I didn't announce anything. I didn't explain. I signed what needed signing and let the echo belong to her. When she realized the audience was still there but not in formation, she tried for a speech that didn't land. The crowd wasn't unkind. They were busy. That's a kind of isolation no room prepares you for. That night I turned off the last alert and let the apartment go still. The compass pendant caught a sliver of streetlight and glowed, a small north with nowhere to point. I left it where it lay. You can't navigate with a trinket when the map is honest. There's no lesson here, final act. She wanted a crowd. She got a mirror. You chose an audience over a partner. Now you can keep the audience.